You're watching Morning at NTV.
At 8 a.m., you are right on time for our Take Note conversation this morning with me, Malaki Vilodera. Just in case you're joining us, we are heavy on hashtag morning at NTV across all the social media platforms. Now, the ministry, pretty much the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development has been listening to your words and views. We've been having conversations that touch on their docket and their mandate. Matters to do with, of course, the monies that ought to go to the elderly, matters to do with the youth livelihood program, and if at all, you know, it's helping people. We've been having that conversation, especially after we saw, you know, it being handed over to State House. They still have their views with regards to that, and we seek to understand what are they doing with regards to all these other critical issues that touch on you and I. You ask the questions, and we have the official here to give us the answers to those, so we can all be on the same page. And also you can get to know how you can go about, you know, pretty much following through with some of these programs that should benefit you. That information is quite pertinent. So in studios, I do have Mr. Ebitu James. He is the Acting Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. Thank you so much for making time, and welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you so much, Mala. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
I think I'll start with a big conversation that we saw early this week. And the Daily Monitor covered the Chadondo East Member of Parliament and had a conversation with him with regards to what his plans are once elected in office. You do know that come 2021, he will be in the ballot papers. He plans to be there. And he said that one of his key mandates, or his key pretty much pointers once he's elected into office, is to move that particular fee or compensation for the elderly from what it is now, which is 60,000, you know, Uganda shillings per elderly person, to 100,000 Uganda shillings per elderly person. Let's talk about that. We just saw a few years ago, a few months ago, it was at 80. Then boom, it goes down to 60,000 Uganda shillings. What is the rationale under there? What informs this particular, you know, categorization with regards to the fee or the amount that is to go to each and every elderly person? We still know there's some districts that don't get this particular, you know, kind of advantage, so to speak. So what is the rationale?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mala. I think that is a good question for us to respond to and to clear the air. I think there is some bit of mix-up in information here. The fact is that right now, this program is being implemented up to end of last financial year, in about 57 districts across the country, and the monthly earning or amount being paid to the beneficiaries is 25,000 shillings per month.
Okay.
All right. Now, the 60-80 question, I think, is a mix-up, like I said. It is about the threshold in age. Now, as it is now, in some districts, especially those in Karamoja, the threshold age is 60 years and above. Those are the beneficiaries. While in other districts outside Karamoja, out of the 57, the threshold cutoff is 65 years and above.
Correct.
Now, as we roll out, of course, you know, Cabinet and Parliament and generally the public demanded that we should roll out this program across the country, and that actually has been approved. So beginning this financial year, we shall be in all the districts of this country. Now, that is where the question of the 80 comes. And 80 here is not about 80,000 shillings.
Yes.
It's about 80 years plus.
Oh, yes.
Those above 80 years. Okay?
Yes.
So let's get it right. The amount to be earned by each old person is 25,000 shillings per month across board.
Across the board.
Yes.
Now the other question would be, why then are we saying that, hey, we're moving it from 60-year-olds and above to 80-year-olds and above? Are we saying that you're struggling with this funding?
Not exactly that, but what we want to say here is that, you know, moving from 57 districts to 135 districts encompasses a lot of things. Here we have to think about the resource envelope that we have. So that change within 1 year has not been very easy in terms of the budget provisions. Of course, we recognize the fact that government has raised the funding from 32 billion Uganda shillings last financial year now to 62 billion. Now with the 62 billion, we're able to accommodate a number, just say not all that should have been targeted. But the view here is that we roll out to all the districts, but as government mobilizes more resources, we keep reducing the threshold. This financial year, we shall be at 80. Next year, when we get additional resources, that is if it is possible, then we come down, reducing up to the cutoff age for the older persons. Of course, you know, it's about 65 years plus.
Right.
So that is our target. But this will only be attained across board when we have mobilized adequate resources. But in the meantime, all those districts where we are already implementing 65 years plus and 60 years plus will continue. It is only affecting the new districts, but then we shall continue reducing gradually until we catch up with what's happening across board.
You know, just about last year, 2018, this particular conversation was topping headlines, and apparently there was some, you know, deficits with regards to the same. You know, some districts saying that, hey, we receive from, for example, January, February, March, we don't receive, then April, like that. So are we saying that now, as you plan to, you know, trickle this out or roll it out to 135 districts, now we know and we're budgeting accordingly with regards to what is available, not banking on if we'll get more resources or not, but, you know, planning within what we have? Are we saying now we're getting it right? We're planning on getting it right? What's the strategy?
I should say so. One, because, well, you know, implementation always meets challenges. And especially that the disbursements we get from government depend on the collections by Uganda Revenue Authority and what's released to us. But the good news I want to say is that government is doing its best to make sure all these commitments, obligations are met. And right now, as we speak, we are not in arrears in any district.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is what is happening at the moment.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think we can put that matter to rest with all the cleanup and clarifications that you've done. But
Right.
do you think, let me just ask you a political question, the ambitions of, you know, the presidential candidate, Mr. Bobi Wine, Robert Chagulanyi, him saying that knowing the challenges that you're currently facing with regards to this program, do you think he will attain that, saying that now the compensation for the elderly will move up to 100,000 Uganda shillings once elected in office? Do you think that is attainable, given all, you know, the factors surrounding the same program?
Mala would have chosen to leave that question to politicians to respond to, but as a technical person, all I can say is that there is what is called reality. When you get to the stage, you will meet reality. And reality here will be determined by the amount of resources and how you allocate resources amongst the competing demands in government. So that is a question that will be answered when you are there on the stage.
All right, so only time can tell on that one.
Yeah.
Let's get to the other big conversation. A majority of Ugandans are the youth, are in that particular youth bracket.
Yeah.
And many have been crying about unemployment, and government is saying, hey, we do have the youth livelihood program and many other programs that, you know, support the youth in, you know, getting into entrepreneurship and different programs just to support the youth. Now, there's this youth livelihood program that has been the conversation, I think, over the past few months. Now, just recently we saw it, you know, move, quote unquote, and you'll clarify that, from the Ministry of, you know, Labor, Gender and Social Development to State House. Did that actually happen? We know in the news we saw it happen, but did that actually happen? What's happening on ground? You're the people who are the forefront of this. What is happening? Clear the air so that we can have some direction.
Yeah, the Youth Livelihood Program is a Government of Uganda program which was launched by His Excellency. It's being managed under the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. The initial phase of it was 5 years, running from 2014 to 2018-19 financial year. So what has happened is that first, there is this big question that you're talking about as it moved from Ministry of Gender to Ministry. We talk basing on facts. One is that the Youth Livelihood Program still remains in the budget of Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. And that does not then confirm what you are saying that it has moved. Instead, it confirms that it is in the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. What has happened, and I do not want the public there to misunderstand, is that the budget has been reduced, but it still remains under the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. Of course, we are aware there are other complementary programs of government. One of them is that program which is under the State House, but that is a complementary program to Youth Livelihood Program. We also have the Youth Venture Capital Fund. We have many other interventions. So there shouldn't be a mix-up in this. The Youth Livelihood Program has not moved to State House. We have other programs under State House which probably have received additional funding, but the one for youth livelihood has instead reduced. So I think that is the fact that we should understand at this point.
So what was happening? Because when this particular, kind of development came to the fore and to the news, so to speak, then there were allegations that, quote unquote, like you're saying, now it's still with the Ministry of Labour, Gender and Social Development, but that time when it came to the fore that, hey, it's moving to State House, there were allegations of, mismanagement of the funds and the program not working out at 100%. What happened in between that time and now that you're articulately saying that, hey, this program is still under us?
Yes, I won't say yes, like any other program, definitely there are challenges, but there are also achievements that we have registered. And I won't tell you that the reduction of funding to the Youth Livelihood Program was not that it should be pushed now off to die. Remember, this is a revolving fund. This money has been disbursed to youth groups in the districts. Districts have been paying back this money to an account in Bank of Uganda. So being a revolving fund, the money which has been recovered now has to be revolved, replowed to the local government.
Correct.
So the understanding here is that, can we, in the meantime, use the money which has been recovered to continue disbursing to the youth groups, new youth groups which are coming up? Yeah, so that is what is on. And that is an indication that the program has not failed, as has been said, because there's money which has been recovered. But that said, we understand, of course, from experience, there's been some challenges in some districts. Again, it's not across board. We have districts which are performing at over 90%, but at the same time, we have those which are performing at less than 10%. So it's mixed results. But on average, we can say the program has been quite successful.
Okay.
Of course, I can also say, as technical people, don't just rely on hearsay. We go into technical confirmation, evaluations have been done, and impact evaluation of this program has been done, and copies are available for people to see what achievements have been made by this program, but of course highlighting the challenges. And of course, as time went on, we did a national review of this program, and people identified where there were gaps which you must plug in. This resulted into a review of the guidelines. And if you have been privy to this information, these guidelines were approved by Cabinet, and they are now being implemented with effect from this financial year, actually last month. So new guidelines have been brought on board with a view to improving the performance of the program. One of the key things that has happened is that the group size has been reduced from 10 and above to 5.
Okay.
So now 5 people can access this. The other thing was that money will now go direct from Bank of Uganda to the groups, not again via the districts. So that was trying to address some of the challenges that had been identified in the course of implementation. So things are moving in the right direction. But I also want to add that that was the first phase. We are now working on the second phase. The second phase is even expected to attract more resources. This is still under discussion. It's being considered by the Development Committee in the Ministry of Finance. And the concept note has already been approved. We're now working on the project profile. It has already been given a code, and it's under that code that we're getting the new money this financial year, that reduced budget. So we are working on the new program, and once it's approved, we expect the resources again to
increase.
Yes.
All right, okay. So if you give it a rating, what do you rate the Youth Livelihood Program at in terms of its successes? You're saying that, hey, it's okay, we had our challenges, but even with the amends that are coming on board in this second phase, it will be something totally different. So where can you rate it at on a scale of 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would put it at 7.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working on the 3.
Okay.
Yes.
Now the other question that is coming through from the youth is that, how different is the Youth Capital Venture Fund or kind of program different from the Youth Livelihood Program, especially now that we know that the numbers have already gone down in terms even of the allocation of the funds that were going into the Youth Livelihood Program, and so many are saying that if then we cannot get on board on this one, then how about to get more information on this other side? So what is the difference between these two programs, and how does this one work, the Youth Capital Venture Fund?
Yeah, there is a clear difference in these two programs. Of course, the Youth Venture Capital Fund came first in the year 2012-2013.
Correct.
And this was being administered through the commercial banks. At that time, it was Stanbic, DFCU, and the cooperative, not Centenary Bank. Centenary took over most of the branches of Cooperative Bank.
Yes.
So those were the three commercial banks through which government was administering this. And the total amount contributed by government was 12.5 billion. And then these commercial banks were supposed to add on the 50%, the equivalent of this. So in total, the fund was 25 billion Uganda shillings in these three commercial banks. And at the time, the oversight function was charged as a responsibility of Minister of Finance. So it was managed by Minister of Finance. It was not until the year 2017, May, that the oversight function was handed over to Minister of Gender. So one clear thing is that the fund is in the commercial banks. In fact, all the other two, DFCU and Stanbic, handed over their money to Centenary Bank. And so it's now only Centenary Bank that is managing this through their branches across the country. Now, the idea then was still to support access to finance, promoting access to finance, and they were targeting individuals. So individuals could borrow, or smaller groups, like 2-3 people who have an enterprise. Now, the interest rate was 15%. And at the time, they also expected some kind of guarantee, security for the loans that you are getting. So the youth, of course, raised an alarm.
Yes,
that we don't have
afford.
security, we
Yes.
cannot do this. And they said, the programs, the enterprises that they go into should be those that have existed for a certain period of time. But some youth are saying, we don't have any startup. How
Yes.
do we meet these conditions? And that's partly what gave birth to the Youth Livelihood Program. The Youth Livelihood Program, one is saying, we are not going to demand for security. The only security we want of you is you to co-guarantee yourselves in groups. And that's why we go into the group approach. The other thing is that we are not going to charge you interest. Instead, what we shall do is, if you go beyond 1 year of payment, we shall have a service fee of 5%. We relax the conditions. And so we had the groups, and we have the issue of security dropped. And so this one was more appealing to the youth, and most people went there. And this one is accessed through the local governments. So the application is at the local government, approval is at the local government, and then submissions made to the ministry where disbursements are made.
Right.
So that is the difference between these two.
But are we saying then that with the stringent conditions that are there with the Youth Venture Capital Fund, then a majority would only say that maybe we fit in that cluster and category of the Youth Livelihood Program, and yet we're saying that the numbers are actually going down. They've been cut out. So what should the youth do?
Yeah, I want to mention here, Madam Mala, that yes, it is true we have the two funds, but even with the Youth Livelihood Program, there are still those youth who want to go it alone. So that means the option of Youth Venture Capital Fund is still relevant. Actually, the money now in the bank is exhausted. The youth have borrowed all the money. What they're doing is to continue recovering so that it's also revolved to other youth. So, youth are in different categories. There are those who want to go it all alone. But I also want to add here that since the oversight function was transferred to Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, we tried to make the conditions a little lighter, even for the Youth Venture Capital Fund.
Okay.
The interest rate has since changed from 15%, it has been reduced to 11%.
That's great news. Okay.
And then the other thing is that instead of having the physical assets as security and so forth, we asked that we adjust to have guarantors. So each group or each youth who wants to apply for this money should have 2 guarantors. And the guarantors are not expected to present their assets or whatever. You only have to indicate that you are a client or you have a running account
with
and active with Centenary Bank.
Right.
So that is how we have tried to simplify the conditions, and that explains why more youth have gone there, as we also continue getting more under the Youth Livelihood Program.
Okay.
But that means we still have, it's not enough intervention, but these are some of the contributions that these programs are making. The number of youth is that high, as you've already mentioned, so the demand is higher. That's why we're coming up with the new programs to try to address this.
Right.
But of course, aware that there are other programs under other sectors We've already mentioned State House, so the youth have opportunity to benefit from wherever they want.
Okay. Let me just ask you something practical, because I know a majority are watching and they're asking themselves, I'm getting this information now. When a youth or a young person, comes to you and wants to access this, facilitations, either under the Youth Livelihood Program or the, Youth Venture Capital Fund, what do you look out for? What should they have for them to actually get a yes from you?
One, we know they are at different levels. There are those who come barely with an idea that we want to do this. So then we take them through the criteria that has been approved by government. One, for you to access this, you must be in a group of 5 people.
Okay.
People who are like-minded, who are willing to take up a similar enterprise. So that is the one condition. Are you willing to co-guarantee one another, because it's a loan, to ensure it's paid? So that has to be done. Now, even if you have come with an idea, it's a responsibility of the technical teams that we have on the ground to help you develop that idea into a project proposal, which is going to be appraised and approved and therefore financed. So that is what it is. One, you have to be a youth. 2, you must have an idea of a project, or you already have an existing project that you want to be financed. So we take both categories, those with the projects and those who are coming
with an idea. And it's beautiful that you actually help them, with developing that idea into something that is tangible.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. And then after that, are we saying that once you take up a group of 5 young people who are very ambitious and are ready to make things work for themselves, are you saying that once they come with this particular idea and they're taken up by your team to develop this idea further into something that is tangible, are we saying that it's a given that they will, go to the next level of accessing, the financial aid, so to speak?
Yeah.
Is it a given, or some of them are taken through that process and they still fall off?
There are other factors that come into play in the process.
Okay.
One is that it depends on the availability of funds for that particular financial year. Because, when we get these allocations, indicative planning figures every year, we give them to the local government. So the local governments manage this. So if the demand is that high, it's overwhelming, they can only support to the extent that they have been financed. So that is sometimes what causes delays.
Okay.
But also, there can be verifications. Like the center, sometimes we're not just in the business of giving money. So once we receive this request from the districts, we can get back to the ground or employ other people to go and verify that these meetings actually take place, because here you're presenting your national IDs, you're also presenting other information about the beneficiaries. So in the process of cross-checking, if we have some issues still to be addressed, this will cause a deferment of the disbursement until many of the things are sorted out.
Okay, all right, so let's flip over. We always say that them that are hard hit are the young people, the women, and the children.
Yes.
So let's touch on the women. There's this particular program, the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, that, congratulations, is actually doing so well. What would you say are some of those factors that have led to the success of this particular program? What was done different?
Okay. The Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program and the Youth Livelihood Program are much the same in terms of design. The only difference is in the target, women and the youth. So I think I would say is doing slightly better. But the challenges that you see in the Youth Livelihood Program, you could probably also have them in the women's program.
Right.
And indeed, the reviews that have been done of the amendment of the guidelines for Youth Livelihood have equally been done for the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, because the challenges were similar. But that is not to rule out the fact that the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program is doing better than the Youth Livelihood Program. The main factor in this is the target. The women are more stable, they have children to look after, and they have no time for running around, while the youth are still exploring. They want to try this, try that, and in the process they make a few mistakes. But we are saying, yes, we also, once we're youth, we want to guide you. You can also behave like the women. And those that we've managed to bring together to think like the women are those that are doing very well. So it's about the targeting. You, if you're a mother, you'll not behave like a girl who's free on the what? On the streets.
Correct.
That's
you have
the only,
some souls
for me,
to
that
fend
is
for.
absolutely, that is what I see as a difference.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and if we have women watching us today, how can they be part of this particular program? What's the entry point?
It is the same like the Youth Livelihood Program. Like
Just
I said,
come on, is it 5 again? 5 women?
Also 5.
Okay.
Yes, it's exactly the same. And so if you're 5 and you have an idea or you have a project that you need to be supported, the technical teams at the local governments are there to support you and take you through the process until it's approved and you get the money in your account. Again, like the youth, the money will go direct with effect from last month. That's this financial year. The money will go direct into their group account and to be managed. They will be the only ones signatories, the treasurer, the secretary, and the chairperson, democratically elected by the group members themselves, will be the signatories.
And you say I think that's beautiful, because then it forces the groups to be structured.
Yes.
That's interesting. Are we then saying that also with this particular women's program, there's zero interest, it's interest-free for this money as the Youth Livelihood Program? Are we also saying that there's zero collateral, only that they guarantee each other? Is it the same structure?
Pretty much so.
Okay.
So for the first year of borrowing, there's nothing that we expect from you apart from the principal. But anything that goes beyond 1 year, we have a service fee. We actually don't call it interest, a service fee just to cushion for inflation rate, so that you keep the value of the money that's going to be revolved to the new groups coming on board much the same. Yeah.
All right. The other group of people that are quite vulnerable, and I think we've been having conversations with regards to them for the past few days, even here on the show, is people living with disability. What are some of these facilitations that are, set up to help them? Because when we were having this conversation with some of them, they were saying even that information gap is a big challenge. A majority don't know that there's some of these facilitations to aid them. Okay. So what do we have? What provisions do we have under the ministry for people living with disability?
Yeah, persons with disabilities still remain one of our priority target groups as the interest groups in the ministry and indeed in government. But first I want to mention that both of these programs also have a provision for persons with disabilities, that is mainstreaming them into existing programs. But beyond that, we move an extra step to see if we can have special provisions for persons with disabilities by having their own funding. As we talk now, up to last financial year, government has been providing 2.1 billion shillings for grants for projects of persons with disabilities. This year, that amount has been doubled. So it has come to 4.2. Okay. So that is PWD grant. But we know that to sustain all this, there must be a really strong law to back up all this. And we've said, as you already know, the bill for persons with disability has been passed by Parliament. We're just awaiting for it to be assented. So it has many other provisions that will probably help us to improve on the conditions of persons with disability. But in terms of the livelihoods, this is what the ministry does. Mainstream them into existing programs, but also have affirmative action programs, special provisions for the persons with disabilities. So right now we are discussing guidelines, reviewing what has been happening to see how we can channel this money, just like we are channeling the Youth Livelihood Program, to groups of persons with disability that have already been identified and approved. Right.
And you're saying that this will be expedited once this bill has been assented into law.
That bill
it will help much.
Very much so, not only in terms of livelihoods, but other considerations for persons with disabilities. Even in a workplace like this one,
yes,
we want to see a person coming on a wheelchair being able to access this high table and speak to the public from here. So to begin from here. So that law will take care of that.
Right.
Yes.
So far we were having also, again, we have quite a number of conversations that touch on the socio-economic, status of our Ugandans. And the conversations has been still, in this day and age, you'd go to a company that has zero provisions for people living with disability. Will we ever get there? And whose role is it to ensure that even these private institutions, put that as their priority, to cater for people living with disabilities? Over and above that, they're battling big battles of being discriminated, in a majority of places they go to, even in the workplaces. But in terms of just providing infrastructure that is, geared towards helping their lives better, much more. What are we doing to do that?
Yeah, certainly. I know it is still a challenge, but to recognize the fact that we have come some reasonable distance from where we used to be many years ago. First, in terms of the representation of the persons with disability, now we have them even in Parliament.
Yes.
And there are a number of considerations that have been factored into that bill. And this, one of them is exactly what you are talking about. So our ministry is responsible for inspections, and the provisions in the law, if approved, as even sections for penalties, if you're found not to be providing what is required. Like I said, either it's a health center, a school, a public facility, you must provide for those. So there is what we have as penalties for those that will not have met those. But we know it's work in progress. Even without the law, we are already trying to implement that. Beginning with our own ministry, you see that happening, the new structures which are coming up.
Right.
Because now we are going into our occupational safety and health department also approving building plans before you set them up. So all the new structures which are coming up are now supposed to be approved by the occupational safety and health, so that these provisions for persons with disabilities and others are factored in.
All right, okay. As we wrap this up, there's also this other issue of cultural institutions now coming to the fore. What's your take on this one, especially now that you know that, as experts would call it, you know, very, very, you know, turbulent waters there with the conflicts that rise with regards to the same. What's your view? What's the ministry's view on this one?
What we have to say about this is that nothing is happening ad hoc. We are being guided by the laws which are on the ground. We have provisions, for instance, in the Constitution, Article 37 or thereabout is talking about the rights of people to practice, to profess their culture, and so forth. So that is embedded in the law. But also we have, still in the Constitution, Article 246, tells us about the leaders of cultural and traditional institutions. That act clearly indicates that they are free to associate in their culture, to form a cultural institution, and to elect their leaders. So we are saying, yes, we have these provisions. How do we regulate this? And that explains why up to today, over all those years, we have only 14 licensed or approved cultural and traditional institutions.
Right.
Otherwise, if it was being ad hoc, then we would have almost every village having a cultural institution. So there are procedures, there's a criteria that is followed. We need to ensure that there's adequate consultations at those levels and approvals by the relevant local governments. And then also we need to check that what they are submitting to us, is it really the view of the communities that they claim to represent? So there are background checks all the time to make sure even what they do is done within the law.
Okay.
Of course, these laws are to be evaluated with the time. If they are identified to be gaps, then we have to tighten.
All right.
But as of now, we are convinced that we are working within the law and things are not going out of hand. We shall manage the situation.
You have quite a number of things to iron out.
And
sure. We always say that it's a battle between, okay, the will is there, but the finances to ensure that these implementations take over.
Yes, it's quite...
it's a hard balance.
We work on that.
Right, but we wish you all the best. And of course, with regards to, you know, any successes in these areas, do let us know so we can, you know, be that particular, you know, kind of frontier with regards to giving information to our young people. Young people, women, and people living with disabilities. That's where a majority of our, you know, the people are actually looking at. Thank you so much, Mr. Ebutu James, for coming in studios. He's the acting permanent secretary from the Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development. Keep your views coming. #morning at NTV. We're taking a short commercial break. We'll be back with so much more. Stay with me.